It's just go to this dungeon, go to this dungeon, go to this dungeon. And, and then all of a sudden Burn shows up again, and then the story starts again. It's like, don't do that to me. You're trying to get me to want to keep playing, and at that point, my motivating factor to keep playing was because I kept hearing that future dungeons are more fun. And, I'd like there to be, I guess, a reason in the game to want me to keep playing. And story, I think, is, whether people want to admit it or not, story is one of those driving factors that makes you want to keep playing. I mean, even bad games, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I played a really bad game last year for the 360. What was it? I played it all the way through, but the game sucked. The controls were horrible. Obviously graphically it's better than anything the Wii has, but it dragged. And the story, wanting to know what was going to happen next, was what kept me playing. And I think that's a tool that Nintendo's kind of forgetting about. Maybe it's just because a lot of their franchises, outside of like maybe a Metroid, doesn't really go into a story much. I mean, Mario doesn't have much of a story. Obviously, Pokemon, that's got not much of anything for story. Animal Crossing, definitely not much. They released a new Punch-Out last year. I mean, what's the story in that? I want to be the champion.
Well, I think what the difference between, even with Mario Galaxy was fun throughout, from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, even though it had, the story, the story capacity of a children's book, without even words. But with Twilight Princess, as we mentioned, the last 4 dungeons were kind of, pretty much cut and dry. But what the real reason for it is, you've explored the entire map by the end of Dungeon 5. Like, you've been through Peak Province, Desert Province are the last 2 things you've got, and then they just happen to squeeze dungeons into places you've already been, and you just sort of take it from there. And so the exploration's sort of not really, much at that point. And in Spirit Tracks, after the story pretty much sets itself up and now you're just knocking down the pins, sure, you're exploring each of the new realms, but it's the same basic premise of, oh, hey, I have to drive the train through mountains instead of ocean, or snow instead of whatever. It's the same repetitive motion. Pretty much the same. The train just keeps going on. So in that capacity, they need to really emphasize, I think, the exploration part, because that's what really has drawn Zelda throughout the entire thing. Is you're always exploring something new, always keeping going to the next place. But they need to keep it, fresh and exciting throughout the whole thing, and not just sort of like, okay, well, we ran out of ideas, but we have more content to put in, so let's just squeak it in right here.
I wanted to quickly counter, you threw out there that, with Wii Motion Plus, and a lot of the statements that the developers have said, that there's they're pretty suggestive that they might be going the first-person route in terms of either combat or just the whole way you see the game. But, I still don't I honestly don't subscribe to that theory just yet. I don't buy into it. I think some of the gameplay elements will still be in first person, obviously, like shooting your bow and arrow or tossing a boomerang, that type of stuff. But I just remember back at the Game Developers Conference a few years ago, Aonuma explicitly stated that in Twilight Princess they tried to do first person sword combat, and it just did not work right, and it looked too awkward for the player. And with their mentality now that they want to make games more accessible, and they said that that's still one of their goals with the new Zeldas. They want to make it very accessible still. The statements don't really align together. It seems like they don't go hand in hand. Now, obviously, the Zelda creators have said stuff pre-release in the past that have turned out to not be true. But the one example of a game that is being worked on and published by Nintendo that's not out here yet, that I think might be a game that is a candidate for how the combat in Zelda might work, is a game called Zengeki no Regenlive, or Dynamic Slash. It's a third-person sword action game that uses Wii Motion Plus as well as a classic controller, and it's kind of this over-the-shoulder third, almost first-person type thing they do with the sword play in it. If you go check out some videos of it, there are a lot of videos of it up. That's something hoping they might do with that. That's something I think that is workable with Wii Motion Plus. That would fit into their mentality of being more accessible. rather than being, full-blown full first-person combat, which I think is a little too extreme.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can make it situational, like maybe if you Z target or whatever, then it switches views to a perspective that makes it easier to to use the sword with the Wii Motion Plus.
It could be situational. I hate to nag on the specific example you just gave using the targeting. That was actually the exact example that they showed at GDC, is that when you locked on to a Staphos, the combat switched into first person at that moment you locked on. And they said that was a really bad, not a good idea at the time. They didn't say bad. They just said it was not what they want to go forward with the direction of this series. But I do agree with your point that there could be situational occurrences that come up where it might it would be relevant to go into first person, like maybe a quick time sequence or one unique battle would go like that. I just have a hard time seeing the entire game's combat system going into first person, especially for swordplay.
I would think in first person it would kind of take away the jump and spin attack in a sense, because since you're looking through but you can't really see behind you and everything, so when you would try to do those different kinds of attacks, I don't know, maybe I'm just being weird, but I think it would take out two of the more used attacks in the series, spin and jump.
It would certainly take away from the cut and dry animations that we sort of learned in Twilight Princess with all the swordsman scrolls that you get over the course of the game. But if they're doing 1-to-1, then is there really a purpose for those in the game? Are we gonna, just have like a quick motion to do a spin attack, and thus there it is, you temporarily pan out to third and back into first after you're done? Or is it just going to be, hey, you're on your own, good luck? It's kind of hard to say at this point.
Yeah. Right. There's a lot of options, like some games have, like a mode where you slow down time or something. There could be, who knows, maybe Link is going to have like a bloodlust mode or something where it switches perspective and you're able to lock on to, to vital points and hit them and stuff like that. I don't know, there's just a whole lot of ways it could go.
And that'll actually about wrap up this segment of our podcast, or the podcast in general, actually. It's ran a little long, but I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation. Again, want to thank all of our guests, Cody, Lefty, TSA, and TML. Guys, you want to say anything before we head out?
Zelda fans don't know what they want.
Gamers don't know what they want.
They think they do, but they don't.
Don't be Team Rocket.
We're blasting off again.